If you are a beginner wanting to learn how to use Copilot Studio, you have come to the right place. Welcome to my complete tutorial for beginners. I'm going to take my time. This one, it's a long video. It's broken up into sections so that you can get to the place you need if you already know some of the basics. And I'm going to take you step by step through everything you need to know to build your own Copilot agent, as we're calling them now, with Copilot Studio. So what we're going to be covering in this video is, in the first section, how to get started with creating a Copilot by describing it or by using one of the built-in templates, how to add knowledge, and there's lots of different ways you can add knowledge into your Copilots, from public websites, uploading documents. We'll talk a little bit about other data sources like SharePoint and Dataverse in there too. The importance of building out topics and controlling the way the conversation flows, which is called conversational orchestration. Why it's not just all AI all the time, and there's good reason for that. How to use entities and variables, which are some really clever things that help the Copilot understand what's going on in the conversation. Actions. Your Copilot agent can take action on your behalf by going out and using flows to retrieve things or by getting other pieces of information for you. We'll talk about the options you've got for publishing your Copilot and then some of the other things that you can do with it. There's a lot in here. If you get value out of this, please help me out by liking, commenting, sharing this with people. Helps it reach more people, and YouTube will help get it out to all of those other people who want to learn this as well. I am actually rating Copilot Studio as, at the end of sort of late part of 2024, as the most strategic and useful skill that you can learn in Power Platform. You'll see that as we go through, but essentially this is the tool set now that you use to build out your own Copilot agent to extend Copilot for Microsoft 365 or any of the other first-party Copilots. And with all of the new things that have been announced coming through in the Wave 2 of the Microsoft 365 Copilot, this is getting even closer to that experience and more relevant. And the roadmap of where Copilot agents are going, which is more than I want to cover here, is a very bright future of interesting things that we're going to be able to do. I'd really encourage you to come on this learning journey with me, and I hope you get a lot out of it. So let's get started with part one, building a Copilot. Everything happens here. You just want to go to your browser and go to this website, copilotstudio.microsoft.com, and sign up for a free trial. Now, everything I'm showing you in this tutorial, I'm working on a free trial. So you've got no problem. You don't need to pay for anything until you're ready to actually publish your Copilot agent and put it out into the world. You will need a work or school account to sign up for that free trial though. Now, this is the main landing page, but when you first come in and sign up through that trial process, it usually lands you here. And this is Copilot helping you build a Copilot. There's a fair bit of this kind of experience going on in here of Copilots helping you build Copilots, but that's good. So it says, hi, I'm here to help you build a Copilot. In a few sentences, how will your Copilot assist your users? So the scenario that I'm going to work through here is using a website that is local to my part of the world here that's called the Better Health Channel. This is a series of sort of articles and pieces of advice on health and health services. It's a really good website because it's very information rich. So I'm going to be using this scenario of creating a Copilot that can help people get advice on healthy living. So let's start with that. So we give it a definition here. So how will your Copilot assist your users? It will help them find information about healthy living. Now you can put whatever you want in there. I will show you where all these pieces go. This setup is actually helping you put together step by step, essentially something that sort of starts by connecting to a website. You don't have to start this way. You can actually sort of jump straight to this button here that says skip to configure. But if you're a beginner, this is a really nice way to get started. So do I have any instructions for how your Copilot should assist? For example, a specific tone. I'm going to keep this one fairly general, but you can add a fair bit of personality in here. So be friendly, provide clear responses. Do not use medical jargon. You can put things in here like use emojis. maybe we should have done that. We can come back and change it, and I'll show you. Use emojis. You can say use very casual language. Make sure you summarize everything in bullet points, so you can actually put things in there that define exactly how the Copilot is going to respond. That's called instructions, custom instructions. Where should the Copilot find important information? Now at this stage, this is starting to add knowledge. The only knowledge that we can add in at this stage is the public website, but we will be able to go in and edit this Copilot to add more things. If you want to create a Copilot that doesn't use a website, you can just skip this step. You can just say no website. So I'm going to put that whole website link in there, and it's going to think about that one a little bit more. Are there any topics or tasks this Copilot shouldn't help with or talk about? So let's say we don't want it to actually recommend any specific medical services or health practitioners. So we'll just put that in there. So what I've done now is given this some guidelines. I've given my Copilot guidelines about how I want to set up the Copilot. I've given it a purpose. I've given it some instructions about how it should respond, where it should get its knowledge from, and something that I don't want it to do. It confirms all of those things. So that is good. We can just click create when we're done, and it will go ahead and set that up. So this is going to put all of those things inside the Copilot. It's going to actually deploy a Copilot for you. Just on the language, I'm going to go back and forth a little bit here between calling it a Copilot and a Copilot agent. I've always only called it a Copilot. Just recently, the language from Microsoft is starting to call these Copilot agents. So if I flick back and forth, essentially the same thing. Copilot agent is just the more modern term, and I haven't quite caught up with that yet. All right, so we have a Copilot here ready to go. Let's have a look at where all those things went. When I described the purpose of what I was doing, that's helped it to choose a name, which is fine. It's brought all of this in here into these instructions. So this is taking what I asked it to do in the first place, its purpose, and be friendly and provide clear responses and avoid using medical jargon. So all of those pieces I've put in there have been combined into this piece that's called the instructions, which is that sort of, it's like an overarching prompt that this Copilot agent has. Every time it produces a response, it uses that as a guideline. We can change that as we go so that you see what's going on. We've got knowledge in here, so it is connected to this website. I don't know if you can hear the birds chirping outside. Where I live, it's getting towards the end of the day, and the rainbow lorikeets, in case you want to look up what that bird noise is outside. And if you can't hear it, then I can hear it, and I'm mildly distracted by it. We have got in here the Better Health website that we just put in. And the other thing here is that the general knowledge is enabled. That means it can use the large language model to sort of figure out answers for things that might not be just in there. We'll have a look again later at what the difference is between those things. So we can actually give this a test run here. So if I come in here and have a look at something that's on this website, you can see we've got some information here about sleep and managing sleep and fatigue. So let's give this a go. We'll come in and say, how can I manage fatigue? And this is, as I said, it's only created it 2 minutes ago. It usually takes a couple of minutes to tee this up, but within only a few minutes here, I've managed to create my first Copilot agent, and it's connected to a website and it's answering questions. Now, why is there a great big long video beyond this? You might ask. Realistically, this is a really good sort of party trick of being able to go, look at this. I've pointed to a website. Here it is. It's all working. There is so much more to this. And I can't stress enough how important it is to not just create a Copilot, point it at a website and go, okay, great, job done. It's a good exercise to go through for learning, but there are many other things. You don't want a Copilot most of the time that is just completely dependent on one website and just using generative AI to produce the answers to that website. I mean, if that meets your needs, good luck to you and thanks for watching. But realistically, there are always subtleties in saying, but if someone asks this kind of question, I need it to answer this way, and I need it to refer to these other knowledge sources, and I want it to do other things. So we're going to go through all of that. There is a skill in this, in the thought process of the actual design. I'll try and talk through as much of that as I can as we go, but these are sort of learned skills the more experience you get. So in the response here, fatigue can be managed in these different ways, and there's a couple of references. So you see it's coming back here with the fatigue fighting tips. So if I click through, that's going to open that source in there. Now I am just working here in a test canvas. The other thing you can do is if I click on here, we can open this track between topics. I'm going to show you another experience as we go a little bit further into it. If I refresh this one now, and have I got that one still on? So you could ask it to say, give me 3 tips as bullet points for managing. Yeah, let's spell it wrong because it can handle that. I know how to spell. It can actually, so this is the concept here is we've got this large language model. It can actually sort of interpret and understand things. So there you go. I've asked the prompt in a different way and it's actually come back. So it's capable of doing that. What we've got in the middle here is the canvas that's actually showing the flow of that conversation and where it went. So when we come back in a little bit to the idea of topics, this is actually what's called a fallback topic. So this is basically just a sort of a default position within the Copilot to say, if of all of the other things I've told you how to answer, you can't find the answer, just fall back to this one. At the moment, this Copilot is literally just a single fallback topic with that website. So that's all it does, but we can build other layers on top of that. So let's take a look at this concept of knowledge and what this is doing in here. We will come at the end to actually sort of publishing this all the way through here. I'm going to work just in this test canvas. This is the experience for building. But in the end, the idea here is that we are building a Copilot that's going to be published out somewhere, either as an internal Copilot for your users or as an external Copilot on a website or various other channels, or you can use this as an extension to your Microsoft 365 Copilot or Copilot for sales or Copilot for service or finance or all of those things as well. So wherever it's going in the end, it's going to go out into the world. This experience is just how we are testing it. So let's come into this knowledge section here. And this is where we're navigating all of the experiences about adding knowledge into the system. So at the moment, what we've got here is a website and it's ready to go. So we can come in here and open the details. Let's edit this one and have a look. Now you'll see the knowledge description here is actually both mandatory and blank, which is interesting. When you go through the process that we just went through of the quick create, it skips over that part. But I want to come in here and show you this because this is actually really, really important here. What is going on here is that this is a description of what this knowledge does. So at the moment, it just creates one topic that just goes off to that website. It doesn't matter. But you imagine you might add 5 or 6 different websites in here, or websites and documents and lots of other things. This description is it's almost like a prompt that helps the AI understand what this is actually doing. So it's called Better Health. So let's, as the outset, sort of tidy this up a bit. There's the web page link, but let's call this the Better Health website, because we can have a name that's not the website. And then the description here is something like, you want to say something about what it actually does. So this is providing information about healthy living and information about health conditions and support services, something like that. You will see later why this becomes important. Let's just save that, because we're going to start using AI to help the Copilot determine which pieces of information it should use when. And so that description, and it's worth, I'm doing a bit of a quick job there, but it is actually really worth thinking that through and taking your time and refining that can really improve the performance of what you're doing. Before we go any further with adding additional knowledge sources and talking them through, I want to show you an example of a website where something doesn't work quite so well, because this one you might realize I've chosen because it works beautifully. It is a very knowledge-rich website. All of the information here is sitting on the page. There's a lot of information on that page, and the Copilot is actually able to read all of that and provide really good answers. So this is a really good example of a website that works well. One of the tricks or traps that people will fall into is if you have a website that has a lot of JavaScript or elements that are displayed as tables on the website, the Copilot can't actually read those. So this is an example here of Melbourne pollen. Where I live in the world, we have a very high pollen count. There's a whole website dedicated to people who have asthma and conditions that need to be aware of this. Thankfully, at the time of recording this, it's all in the nice low category. But something like this, right? This is a beautiful table where we are able to look at what's going on in here. But if I grab this website, for instance, and let's come back into my bot here, I can add another website. So this is just sort of showing you what you can do with adding more things in here. Again, let's give this a description. So we'll say provides the pollen forecast for areas of Melbourne and Victoria, and add that one in there. We'll give it a second to spin up while I explain what's going on here. So as a human, I can look at this beautiful table here and determine exactly what's going on. This is designed for very good human readability. I can come in here and straight away say, yep, East Gippsland is low, and see exactly what's going on. If I have a look though at the page source, so let's right click here and say view page source. And if I do something like, let's find the text for East Gippsland, which is a region in the state sort of near where I live. But if we go through here, this is actually the table. So you'll see here we've got the forecast cell with the grid. But if you look at this, what I'm looking at as a human on the screen is a beautifully laid out table that has one piece of information and another piece of information about the forecast. This has now got East Gippsland, and the fact that the forecast level is low is sitting, I don't know, it's kind of hard to see it's in there because this is all formatted in a way that's designed to work for displaying it, and it's not actually in a structured format or a structured table that a generative AI is going to be able to read. So let's close that one down and I'll show you what happens here. So if we come back into our bot, that Copilots used to be called chatbots or bots. I'm just a little all over the place with keeping up with the language. Bot equals chatbot equals, actually no, an agent is more sophisticated than a bot. Forgive me, I'm going to try not to call it a bot anymore. What is the pollen forecast for East Gippsland? And you'll see it's gone into that knowledge source where we looked at before. And it says to find the pollen forecast, you can check local weather. Okay, so that hasn't helped me particularly. What this is doing, where it says AI generated content may be incorrect, what's happening, if I go back to my overview here, is that it's using this. So spoiler alert, I've already told you it can't find the answer in that knowledge source, but I'm not really proving it very well here because I've got this enabled. So this part is where you get this message, AI generated content may be incorrect, means it's using the same way that if you go to just copilot.microsoft.com on the public website or ChatGPT, that large language model is able to answer things for you. That's what this is doing. So you will have use cases where that is highly useful and desirable, and you'll have use cases where you say, no, I want to lock down my Copilot so that the only thing that it can answer is the knowledge sources that I give it. So if you set that feature to disabled instead of enabled, now it can't use its own general knowledge to be able to answer the questions. Now I've said you only know what I've given you access to. So let's see what happens here if we test the difference. I've actually got a whole other video on that feature in particular if you want to go deeper into it and showing you some of the things that it can do. So we'll give that a refresh and we'll ask the same question. I am also going to give it a question of something it definitely can answer. So as much as it can't handle this sort of table format, if I go into the sort of about us section, this is a nice text-based thing. So let's come back in here and say, tell me about the Melbourne pollen service. So this is something it can do because it can read this off the website. So it's gone in to find that data source. There we go. Gives you the information, gives you the link. Let's try the forecast again. What is the pollen forecast for East Gippsland? I'm always worried doing live demos. There we go. Can't find it. We're going to have a solution for this later. When we get to the section on actions, I'm going to show you how you can make this kind of data accessible in a properly structured table. But for now, just be aware that if you're using your website as a knowledge source, if you've got a lot of JavaScript or a lot of beautifully formatted elements and things on the screen, the generative AI may not be able to answer that. It's all done based on the indexing that happens underneath, and that's the same indexing that Google and Bing used for the search indexes. So if you can't find it on Google, or you can't find it on Bing, or you can't find it using copilot.microsoft.com, this isn't going to find it either because it's not accessible to the index. So something to keep in mind if you've got control of a website that you're trying to connect to, that will be a limitation. So let's go back now and have a look at some of the other knowledge options. So the next thing I'm going to show you is that you can upload a document into here. So I have got a document in here somewhere. Let's take a look at my sample document here. I have got a PDF that I've downloaded. In keeping with our healthy living, this is the Australian Dietary Guidelines. So we've got standard serves of things in here. So this goes through and tells you what a standard serve of vegetables, fruit, grain, all of those things looks like. So we will just close that one down. So let's come into here, and now I'm going to add knowledge, and I'm going to drag and drop a file here. So I'm going to go to my other monitor and just grab that PDF in there. And again, let's be good about giving it a description. So this one, I think I've got this one here already. Information about, I'll just paste it in and describe it to you. So I've put the description in there. Information about the Australian Dietary Guidelines, including standard serves of all the major food groups and recommended daily intake. So I've given that quite a bit of information. Now what this is doing is actually uploading the document into Dataverse underneath. Don't panic. This is it's not actually creating a database or anything in there, but it's using that Dataverse indexing to process that document. So while it's sitting here in progress, it's processing that document and using that indexing to be able to understand it. Obviously, the larger the document you've got in there, the longer that's going to take. There's a range of different file formats you can use in there. You can put in EPUBs, PDFs, so obviously the obvious one, Word documents. So there's a bunch of things you can put in there. You were able to put Excel files in there. I wouldn't recommend that. It gives you a bit of a sense of feeling like you're putting a structured data table in there, but Excel isn't actually properly structured. So this works best with chunks of text, unstructured chunks of text, so any document in that kind of format. This is one where I have done a little bit of editing, because even though that ready pops up within about 30 seconds, it does take a little bit longer than that to actually work. Give it a few minutes. This is a good way to go away and have a beverage of choice or do something else. Now if I come in here and say how much is a standard serve of bread, we will see that it's actually able to draw that response there from the Australian Dietary Guidelines. Serving slice is approximately 40 grams. So if I click on that, you'll see it comes up here. Now this is different from the experience of connecting it to the website, because when we connected it to the website, it actually redirected to that website, whereas when you upload a document, it's taken that document actually into the Copilot knowledge, and it will actually show the section. So we've got here the one slice of bread. You notice you sort of lose all the formatting here because the original document looked much nicer than that. So again, you've got to think about the use case for this, but it's very good if you've got knowledge that you want to be able to sort of upload and have the Copilot refer to that maybe doesn't or can't for some reason exist on a public website, and where it's an unauthenticated use case. Putting it on SharePoint means that people would have to authenticate in. Let's take a look at those other knowledge sources now. So if we come in here and say, let's add knowledge, there's SharePoint. I'm not going to do these two here because my use case here is very much external, but if you'd like to see videos on the SharePoint and Dataverse knowledge, please let me know in the comments and I'll work on those. But SharePoint basically means you can point at a SharePoint document library. So you put the URL in there. There is a little bit more fiddling around there with setting up the authentication for the users to be able to access that. And same with Dataverse, that one will actually allow you to connect to Dataverse tables, and again it gives you the option to put in descriptions of things, and you can use that as a knowledge source. But again, there's a fair bit more in there that is a little bit more that I want to get into in this tutorial, so let me know if you would like to see those things. There are actually other knowledge sources in here as well. You can bring in enterprise data connections. I don't have any in this environment at the moment, but you can connect to third-party data sources if those connections have been set up. So plenty more coming there. This whole knowledge feature at the time that I'm recording this video is all still quite new, so watch this space. But the idea of kind of giving your Copilot knowledge is such a core concept of the value of a Copilot in a business scenario, rather than just this general thing of being able to have a Copilot that's out there just randomly answering questions from the website with the large language model, which is most of what we're used to, or having something that's connected. The Microsoft 365 Copilot, for instance, is connected to all of your documents and your chats and your emails, and not everyone wants that all the time for every scenario. So the idea here is that you're giving it a very contained, controlled set of knowledge, and you can see that it's only answering questions based on that knowledge that we're giving it. All right, that's part 2 done. Let's have a look now at part 3, which is how we use topics. Now, topics are really important to control the flow of the information. You don't necessarily want the generative AI taking full responsibility for answering all these things. So this is the concept of conversational orchestration, where you can decide how you want to direct the conversation, including which knowledge sources you want to use for which parts of the conversation, or actual sort of hard-coded answers and variables and things that you want it to be able to do. So all of this lives in this menu here called topics. So we're going to do a couple of important things first. Lesson 1, Lesson 2, and Lesson 3 are topics that are useful if you want to play around with a sort of a demo. These are things that ask you about the store opening hours for places in Redmond in Seattle. What I want you to do is just switch those 3 to the off position, because if you're doing anything at all that overlaps with those, you're going to get some weird answers, and you just don't want them as part of your actual Copilot. The other thing that we've got in here is to look at the difference here between custom topics, which is what these ones are, and the system topics, which is things that are sort of just functionally helping the Copilot to work. So there are things in here which are escalation topics. I'm not going to cover that here, but you can escalate to a live agent in Dynamics 365 customer service. We have got sort of things that happen if there's an error or there's multiple topics matched. We've also got something here that can help you with getting feedback at the end of a conversation. So the one that I want two that I want to show you here are these 2 at the start. So you'll notice it starts off with, hello, I'm Healthy Living Assistant, a virtual assistant. Just so you're aware, I sometimes use AI to answer your questions. From here, this is sort of more talking to me as a creator. This is not particularly useful for me as something that's facing out to maybe customers who want to use this. You'll notice as soon as I have clicked on this, it's actually gone into this topic for me. But let me go back and show you where that is. So in the system, it's this one here that's called the conversation start topic. And you can actually change this. So it says, hello, I'm bot name. So that's the first idea of a variable. We're going to be looking a little bit more at variables, but that's the Healthy Living Assistant. So if you change the bot name, that will change. You don't have to have that in there. I am going to remove some of this. If you provided a website during creation, so that's sort of like an instruction to the maker. We're going to remove that. What can I help you with today? So you can put in whatever you want here. I'm just going to use my little emoji keyboard to get an apple in here. In case you don't know, Windows period, Windows full stop is a way to get the emoji keyboard. So let's pop a little apple in there just to add a little bit of color. And then what you can do is save that. Now, this is a trap. The save button looks like it's grayed out. Oh no, what am I going to do? Click out of that. Now we're good. Always get caught by that. So we're going to save that. And now when I refresh my Copilot, I get that new message. So that is in topics, system topics, conversation start topic, or click on it and it will take you straight there. So let's create an example of a custom topic. So let's say I want a topic here which is controlling the conversation if somebody says, what do I do in an emergency? So if I come into my actual bot, if you lose the test canvas at any point, you can just put that there. What do I do in an emergency? Then it will give us an answer, and it may be good or bad, but we might want a real no mucking around situation here that just says call the emergency number. So we've got like quite a lot of stuff in here. Maybe I want to control this conversation so that every single time all it does is tell you this piece of information here. In Australia, 000 is 911. That's our emergency number. So what I'm going to do is go into the topic section here, and I'm going to say add a topic. Now I can either create a topic from blank, or I can use Copilot to help me build a Copilot topic. So we'll give this topic a name. This is going to be emergency. And create a topic to tell the user to call to dial 000 for an ambulance or police. Now, if you do something more sophisticated here, if you say, you can put in sort of branching logic to say, if the person asks for this, do that. So you can actually play around with that description and it will do some fancy things. We'll show you that. A couple of things that are really important here. Firstly, the trigger has come through with these phrases. Now, this is the old school way of doing it. We're going to upgrade this in a minute. This is using phrases. So the idea here is that the Copilot agent is going to be able to figure out which topic, where it should go in the conversation based on these trigger phrases. And therefore, whatever the person types, it's able to detect the intent using these trigger phrases. And so you'll see it's automatically generated a few for me. I could edit those phrases if something isn't quite right. And you can see here that it's basically interpreted what I put in the instruction and put that in there. So maybe that's good enough. We've got some other things that we can edit in here, but I'm actually very happy with that one. So I'm just going to save that, and then we'll see the difference here if we refresh this and say, what should I do in an emergency? And you'll see in the canvas that it's actually triggered the right topic and it's given the right answer. So it's now not using those knowledge sources. I've got complete control over those topics. Anything here, when you're designing your Copilot and designing the way you want it to work, anything that could get you in legal trouble of any kind, anything that needs some sort of like regulatory overlay, anything that's related to safety, anything that's really important to your brand. Think of any major brand and think about how you want certain questions to be answered. If you're Apple and somebody says, what's the best phone? You might want that answered a certain way and not just by generative answers. So anything where you really, and think about this, because almost any Copilot that you're using in a real scenario, you are going to want to control that conversation at some point. This is a really simple example. We can do much more sophisticated things with the topics, which I'm going to show you. But the first thing I'm going to do is upgrade this experience to something that's currently in preview, but is actually going back to why we put all those descriptions in, and something that's actually going to perform much better than this sort of, it's strange to think of this as old school now because 3 years ago this was state of the art stuff. But we're going to go here into settings and generative AI. How should your Copilot interact with people? We're calling it classic, not old school. I shouldn't call it old school, classic. I'm going to choose this generative preview and click save. And you'll see here that you can also choose how, this is a temperature control. This is a generative AI concept of should the content moderation be very creative or very precise. I'm actually just going to set it at the medium level there because I think that gives it a little bit more freedom to move. So this now changes the experience so that the description of everything is what is going to be used. So this is actually using now the large language model to determine the flow of the conversation rather than that classic experience that we've had in the past, which isn't as sophisticated at doing this. So let's close this down. And now if I go into my topic, you'll see I've lost that topic. Let's go back into topics and have a look at my custom topic called emergency. this is now, do you see it's got a description? And I didn't do this, I didn't edit the video here at all. It's taken those trigger phrases and converted it into a description. But from now on, because I've got that setting enabled, it's always going to use the description of what's going on in the knowledge sources in here to determine which thing it should trigger. So this is why you want to be careful about doing those descriptions to help it out. And if you find as you test out your agent that it's not finding the right topics, having a look at the descriptions of how you've set up those topics and knowledge sources is going to be your first point of troubleshooting. Now let's have a look at the next level of sophistication in creating topics, which is part 4 here, entities and variables. So I'm going to create another topic here based on this piece here, where we are offering guidance of where to seek support for mental health services for children and young people. And if we have a look at this content here, there's quite a lot on here, but you'll see that there are different services here for children sort of up to 12 years old, and then for preteens and youth. So there's a service here called Headspace, which is designed for ages 12 to 15. And this other one here, Triple P, which is really designed for up to 12-year-olds. So I'm going to use this to show you a build of a conversation that can understand entities, and we'll come to this. Entities, by the way, here does not mean database entities, if you're familiar with that old language in Dataverse. This is actually the concept of a piece of known or structured data that sits in unstructured text. So if in that piece where I was just looking at, it says this is for 12-year-olds, the age can be an entity. So that could the AI can actually look for a specific type of piece of information in there. It's looking for the age. You can also do this for things like looking for colors or names of cities or names of organizations. I'm going to use the standard one here, but you can also create these entities for your own language to help the Copilot identify those specific pieces of information in large blocks of unstructured text. So this is quite clever and highly underrated. This is a good thing to know about. So what am I going to do? I'm going to create another new topic here, and we'll create this one from a description again. So this one is going to be support services for mental health is the name of the topic. And I'm going to give this one a bit more of a description to helpfully show you what is going on here. So create a topic to guide the user to different mental health support services based on the age of the person who needs support. There will be options for children, young adults, and adults. Let's see how we go with that. So you can see there I'm implying that there's going to be some kind of branching logic. Let's see if it can actually do this. So what this should do for me, here we go. So it's actually given me a trigger. So this tool can handle queries like these. So you'll see it's written that description based on what I asked it to do. And then it said, what is the age group? And it's given me multiple choice options. So it says children, young adults, or adults, and then which one is it? So if we use this topic, it will actually give you those options where it says, is this for, actually, let's do this. So I'll show you what this looks like. So what happens is now if I say mental health support, it should automatically trigger that topic because we've got that in there. And then it's going to give me these options because it's multiple choice, children, young adults, or adults. Now I didn't finish building this out. If I click children, nothing will happen because, oh, here we go. It's actually kind of filled this in with its own sort of suggestions. And interesting. So the AI has actually built out the whole topic for me, but I want more control than this. I actually don't want it to use these multiple choice, but you can use multiple choice in there. So I am going to edit this topic. And in fact, what I'm going to do is go into my topics. I'm actually going to delete this one. So let's go in and find it. Support services for mental health. We're going to go in here. I'm just going to grab this description because the description is good and I don't want to type it again, but I want to show you what we can do for creating a topic from scratch. So let's copy that. So we're going to go back into topics and support services for mental health, delete. Okay, I'm just going to call it something slightly different so that I don't confuse things here. So we're going to create a topic from blank this time, and the title of this topic is going to be mental health support services, just so it's not exactly the same. And then I'm going to use that lovely description that we had before as the things, the same concept. What I want to do here, though, is to ask a question and not give it multiple choice. I want it to pick up on the age because I want to show you these entities. So as you're building out the topic, these are all of the different things that we can do in here. You can send a message, which is just giving a response, ask a question, which is what I'm about to do. But we've also got a bunch of other sort of more advanced things here. We're going to come back to the call and action. You can redirect to another topic or finish with a survey. There's all sorts of things you can do in there. So this is the one I'm going to show you. Ask a question. How old is the person who needs support? Now, instead of this multiple choice experience that we had before, what I'm going to say is I want you to identify in here a particular type of information. So this is where we've got different things. So not multiple choice or options from a list. Age. So age is one of the entities that we've got in there. So now it's able to find that in the conversation. What I want to do now is save that user response as a variable. And that variable means I can use that in other ways. I could use that to push it out in an action to send to some other system. I can use it to repeat back into the conversation, which I'll show you. So what we can do here is if I click on this one, this brings up the variable. Now you don't want to go naming things var1 because as soon as you've got more than one, it's going to get confusing. Let's leave var as the prefix and call this one age. And you'll see that you can set this variable to be working just within this topic, or I might make this one global, which means anywhere in this agent, if the conversation leads down this path and the age is determined, it can be used elsewhere as well, which could be a useful thing in this scenario. Now what I'm going to do is add this conditional branching that we saw before, but I'm not doing it based on on multiple choice. I'm actually doing it based on that number that it's found. So we're going to add a condition, and the condition is going to be based on the age, and I want that to be if it is less than or equal to 12. We can rename this condition, so this can be child, even though we don't have the options that we had before. So that's what's going on there. Let's add another condition in here. We'll go here again, add a condition, because I want child, teenager, or young adult, and then just everybody else is the sort of if neither of these things is true. So if the age is greater than or equal to 13 and the age is less than or equal to 25, because remember that service for young adults, I'm just going to call this one teen and young adult. And then this one here is going to be, we'll just leave that as all other conditions. That's what's going to happen. Let's just save this before we lose it. So what we've got so far now is it's going to trigger the topic, how old is the person, and then it's going to find the answer. So now what we want to do is continue this conversational thread. So if it's a child, this is the part I didn't do before, we want to send a message. So for someone who is, now we can bring the variable back in here, variable age, so we can repeat it back, years old. We recommend the triple P service. Now you can put more things in here. I'll show you one example of something being a little bit more fancy. So let's just take a look at the Headspace website. I'm going to link to their services page. I'm actually going to get one of the images from here. If I right click on this and you find something where you can say copy image link, then what we can do is add a message in here. So let's click here, send a message. But instead of just having that very basic message like we had before, you have actually got the option here. If you go in, you can actually use different kinds of cards. So you'll see here that you've got the ability to add images in there, videos, adaptive cards, which is a whole other skill set. If you've got that, you can do even more sophisticated things in here. I'm going to use the basic card. Again, if you're interested in more detail on all of this topic stuff, then let me know. We can do more videos on this. I'm trying to give you the highlights all in this one video here. So for teens and young adults, we recommend Headspace. And then what we can do here in the media section, come in and put Headspace as the title, and you'll see it's building it out as I work through it. So we'll go mental health support for young people. And then the image URL, which is the one I just grabbed, we'll just paste that in, and then we can put the text in there as well. That should work, and you can also add buttons in there too. Now, we can, for all other conditions, add a message here that is saying refer to some other service, or we could use this topic to say, let's refer to a particular website. So let's go back to the Better Health channel here, and I'm going to find mental health services. Now, this will only work if the URL is only 2 levels deep. I should have said that at the start. Your URL that you put in here will only work if it's 2 levels deep, but once you've got that in there, it will find everything below that. So I'm actually just going to use this particular subsection of the site. So we're going to go back into the topics, and I'm going to use advanced here and say generative answers. And then we are going to take the input, which is, we need to find the system input. So this is the activity.txt. So this one here, activity.txt, is basically whatever the person has typed in here. This might not work so well because I've got this question, but we'll go with it. And then we can put the data sources in here and say, I want to add knowledge, I want to add a public website, and I want to put that one in there. Let's pretend I've done the description. I think I've explained that well enough. And now what we've got is something that is going to use generative answers within that topic to go to a specific page. So see how you can use that knowledge to actually sort of embed it in a particular place. That could have been a document there as well. So lots of different things here in controlling how this works. Let's give this a test run now. I'm not sure how well my generative answers will work with this question in here. I'm not going to worry too much about that because mostly what I'm trying to show you here is the entities concept. So you'll notice now, remember when I had my track the conversation before, this has now got me a different option. Because I switched over to that new generative AI experience earlier, I've now got this wonderful thing called a conversation map. And this is now going to show me the sort of inner workings of how the agent is deciding which topics and which knowledge sources to use. Let's give this a refresh. I want to show you the variable and the entity filling first. So the first thing we're going to do here is to say mental health support. And it should trigger that topic, and in fact it should show me on the side here what's going on with that, so it can see that it has triggered the topic and it's asked the question, how old is the person who needs support? So let's try out our beautiful card. Let's put in someone who is 18, and there we go. We get the Headspace with the link and that card that we showed. The other thing about the entities is that it can identify it even if the person doesn't just give a straight answer. So in the previous one, we just put in the number 18, which looks fairly easy, but let's say the person comes in and asks for mental health support, and then it will ask, how old is the person who needs support? My child is 6 years old. So I haven't just given it the number, but it's actually able to find that piece in there and then go ahead and do that. So it can extract, and this is useful for things like emails or order numbers or any of those things that you want to do. It can extract that information, and it can also just know in the conversation if it's already got that information, and you can allow it to skip this question. So if we have a look at the options for this question, you can actually say that the question can be skipped if the person has started the conversation with, I need mental health support for my 6-year-old, then it already knows that and it can skip the question. So you can do some quite clever authoring with entities. Again, if you want more on that, I can go deep on entities, but that should give you enough for a beginner tutorial to get started with that, as well as with variables that you can use to put back into the conversation. And when we get to the next section on actions, you can also use variables there as well. So let's take a look, part 5 here, at what we can do with actions, which is this next one here. Create your first action. This is about allowing the Copilot to do something, to go out in the world and get some information. So there's different ways that we can create actions here. You have got some popular ones. We're going to use the weather forecast one because that's the one that's easy to use. It's an external one that doesn't require any kind of sign up. So if you're learning, anyone can access this one. But you can do this if you've got APIs into your existing systems that have been set up, or other APIs, you can use that. We have also got the ability to use Power Automate flows, so I'm going to show you that concept as well. And if you're a Power Platform person and you've been working with connectors and custom connectors, those are all available to you here, so you will find yourself on familiar ground. So let me show you the concept first of using this API action. So this is the MSN weather forecasting tool, which actually gives you a great deal of information about what's happening with the weather. So back to our sort of thread about the pollen counts and things, maybe we want to check the UV index as well. So this one is going to reach out and get that information. What we're going to do here is switch this from user authentication to Copilot author authentication so that the user doesn't have to do some kind of login. Again, that's there so that if you want an authenticated source for the user to log in, that will do that. But for this one that's publicly available, that just messes it up, frankly, so we want to have that in there. And then we've got different options to configure. So again, we've got the action name, the display name, remember the description and why that's important, but it's pretty much there with the connector, so that's okay. So let's click next. And then what we've got is inputs and outputs. So the inputs here, we have got the location. So this is looking for the city or the place where the person is coming from. And we've also got units, which is the measurement system. Are we talking imperial or metric units? When we have got the outputs here, there's 39 different outputs. So there's a lot of different things in here. We can come in and edit the outputs. And let's say I don't want the moon phase code. I can delete that one and move all of those things around. And you'll see we've got a lot of different things in here. We've got the wind direction, the wind speed, precipitation, a whole lot of things in here. So I'm just going to leave them all in, but you could actually really narrow this down to just provide you with the things that you want. And we're going to click save and next. So that is all done. Get the forecast and let's finish that. Now we can actually change this up a bit. I'll show you how it works, and then we can give it a second to come in. We can actually come in here and change it so that it knows that it's only working in certain units. But let's just, we can just say, what is the forecast in Bendigo today? That's another city in the state where I live. We'll see if it can handle that. It's a fairly obscure reference for it. All right, and it's got saying we're missing some information. So it's actually saying here, so this is good. This is a good error. I definitely did this on purpose. So what this is doing is saying the idea of the plugin here is that this action needs certain inputs. It needs the input of the location. So you can see in this canvas on the side here that it's got the location as Bendigo. It's picked that up from the thing. This is a little bit like that entity thing that we were just looking at. It's looking for a location and it can identify that, but it also needs the units. So it needs to know, do we want imperial or metric? And it can't answer that. It's missing information, but it's able to figure out what it's missing and ask for it. I didn't build that, right? You didn't see me build the topic that said to ask for that. It's just, that's just part of how it works. I work in metric here in Australia, so we're going to go with that, given that it's my healthy living based on information here. Now it's happy. It's got both of those things, and we should get the forecast. Come on, you can do it. We can do it. All right, I still haven't finished with this one, but that's a good example of how it comes together. Let's give this an edit because I've obviously skipped over something important here in the topic. So let's go into my action. Let's change a couple of things. So the input, the location is going to be dynamically filled with something that comes from the user's response. That's still true. But the units, instead of being dynamically filled, this time I want to say we're going to set this as a certain value. And then I'm going to choose the value, either imperial or Celsius. Forgive me if you're watching from the United States. I'm going to go with Celsius. So now we've got that set, so it shouldn't actually ask me for that anymore. But on the outputs, there's one other thing here. So we've got all these outputs, but we haven't actually given it the space to respond. So we do want it to respond. That would be helpful, thank you. And so now what we've got is the option to say the user will see either the AI dynamically generates a message, or I can create a message. So if I say I want to create a message, now I'm back in the world of the same sort of thing I did with the topic that comes in there. And you'll see that I've got all these different sort of variables that are coming from the output response. So if I just wanted to have the wind direction, I could put that in there. But let's just let the AI dynamically create the message, and adaptive card is an option there as well if you have that skill set. So we are going to click save, and hopefully this will be a bit more useful this time. Let's refresh this and ask again, what is the forecast for Bendigo today? And it should just give me that. We'll see it pop up on the side with the conversation map. It's going to figure out that it's got a location. It knows that I want the answer in Celsius, and it should give me all of that information. Now what we can do is use Power Automate to call something. So remember before when we had our lovely Melbourne pollen situation and it couldn't read this information here. So what I'm going to do is create a spreadsheet. So I have actually got something that's very basic. This is Excel Online, so this needs to be online, but you can use this with any kind of data source here, but this needs to be, I want this to be an unauthenticated data source. So this is a really simple table. It's just got these values in it. So you can see I've just copied the values from the website. They're all low. I've just changed one of them to high because I want to prove that it's actually returning a different response and not just saying low every time. The tricks here, if you want to be able to use Excel Online, this needs to be actually saved into your OneDrive, and it needs to be formatted as a table. So if you don't know how to do that, you grab that. We go to Home and Format as Table, and you just format it as a table and give that table a name. So you need to make sure that you've got those things right, and then we can connect this up using Power Automate because it can't read this on the website. So if this was my real scenario, it would be relatively easy. Maybe this could be connected to the data source where it's coming from if I could authenticate that, or I could just put it on a spreadsheet and have some automation that just updates this spreadsheet every morning, and my Copilot is reading from this spreadsheet. So let's get rid of that. We'll go back into here, and I'm going to go back into my actions now and create another action. Now this could also be something, again, you could choose whether this is just an action that sits there or whether you have it in a topic where the topic says call a flow, but we've looked at topics. I'm just going to show it to you from here. This is actually one that I've prepared earlier, the Get Pollen Forecast. So we're going to build it again because it's more interesting if you see it being built. So we're going to say, let's use a flow. So I can use that existing flow if I've already got that in there, but I'm going to create a new flow that's going to open a tab here for Power Automate. And you'll see what we've got here is this input and output. We want to run a flow from Copilot, take some kind of input, and then give some kind of output as a response back to Copilot. So run a flow from Copilot has inputs in it. So we are expecting a text input. We are expecting the person to give us the name of the region. So we remember my spreadsheet here has a region and a pollen forecast in it. So that's as simple as that. That's all we need to do. And then what we're going to do is in between these two actions is run a connector to Excel Online to get that piece of information. So the connector we need here and the action we need here is the get a row. So what we're going to do is choose the location. So where is this coming from? I've just got it saved in OneDrive for Business, but you could have that in a SharePoint library as well. The document library then is just going to be OneDrive. The file, so we look up the particular file. So we've got a file folder here. I've actually just got this saved on my OneDrive in a Copilot Studio demo folder. And then we choose the table. So remember I said you had to format it as a table. You'll get stuck at this point if you haven't formatted it as a table. I've got my table in there called pollen forecast. And then which column am I looking for? So the user is providing us with a region. So I'm looking for, so now it knows the columns in that table. So we're going to choose the region column, and then the value, this time now, this value is what is the person putting in. I want to get the value that they entered in this previous step. So we're going to use this little icon here to search for things that are going on in the flow. So I want something from the runner flow from Copilot step. I want that input that they've put in there, which is the region. That's it. So we've now run the flow, asked them for the region, retrieved that, and now we need to output the other column, which is the matching pollen forecast value. So we go into respond to Copilot. We're going to add an output, which is also text. That is going to be the pollen forecast, and the value that we respond with will come in here and look that up, and that is coming from that get a row step, and it's this one here, pollen forecast. You can see that's coming from Excel. The other thing you want to do is give this a name. I'm going to, because I already had the get pollen forecast in there, and like you normally wouldn't be doing this, but I'm just going to call it something different. Look up pollen forecast, and we're good. Let's save the draft of that, and then we're good. Okay, let's publish it. Give it a second. And then there's one more thing I want you to check. So if we just go back here, what happens is you've got a connection reference. So this is connected to the Excel online business. I've got a green tick there. If it's the first time you're using the connector, just make sure that that's all properly connected and authenticated. Otherwise, you're going to get errors back over in your Copilot. So now if we go back into here, it will say refresh, and we should see that third flow. There we go. So there's the one I had before, but this is the one I've just created. So now I can choose that, and this is now going to behave in a way that is very similar to when we set up that weather forecast, but I've done my own connection here. So the input is the region. How will the Copilot find it? Just from the user response. And now the output, we might want to edit this output, same kind of concept we had before. So we could put in here, how do we want this to respond? So yes, we do want to respond to the user after running the action, and we've got the same options before. So AI can dynamically generate a message. How about we create the message this time? So we'll just say the forecast is, and then I can just grab one of those variables. So we should be able to find the variable called pollen, the output there, pollen forecast. So then we should be good to go. We'll just go next. So there's the action. We've got the input, the output, and finish. Now let's see what happens. We'll give it a second to connect everything up, and hopefully we won't have any errors in here. If you are getting value from this, if you've come with me this far, give me a comment. If you've come this far, not everyone will come this far. And please remember to like and share and add comments on here to help other people find this. I'm putting a lot of explanation in here because I think people find that helpful. So please add a comment if you've come this far with me, and we'll see how we go. All right, I think that, oh, there we go. All right, I thought I was going to have to talk for longer to do this in real time. So now we have got that one in there. So now I should be able to say, what is the pollen forecast for East Gippsland? And hopefully this time, because I've got that in my data source. Now this is where we need to go through another kind of connection here. The first time you as a user use this, you do need to do this sort of connection request. So we'll just come in here. This is just a one-off. So we'll just say, let's connect that one. And I'm not sure if this is going to be a permanent thing or not, but it is something that we have to do at the moment. So this is a one-off though. Once that's done, you shouldn't have to do it again. Just like building the suspense of this. All right. Come on, loading. There we go. Connected, green tick, happy times. And close that one down, and let's retry. I don't like the retry. Oh, there we go. The forecast is low. All right, but that's working, but let's see it properly working here. So we go from the start here. What is the pollen forecast for East Gippsland? and it should just come back and say the forecast is low. So there you go. So that's actions. There's many other different types of actions in there. You can use all sorts of connectors. There are some advanced actions with AI builder prompts. Again, let me know in the comments if you'd like additional videos on all of those things. I'm going to see what people are most interested in. Let's do the final thing now of sort of putting this out into the world. So we can publish this, but I'm just going to do one more thing first. Part 6 here, publishing and settings. So my Copilot's name is fine. I'm going to change the icon. I've actually used Copilot to generate a little Apple icon here, because why not? And it needs to be in PNG format, so it's happy. That's good. We can just save that, so that will come up. Something on a white background. It kind of comes in a circle format, so don't have something that goes right out to the edges because it will get a little bit chopped off in there. The other thing that you can do in here, and if you want to publish this, I'm going to publish this now to a demo website, and this is something that you'll need to do if you want to do this for yourself for practice, is go into security, and you'll see that you've got these options here for the authentication. So the standard authentication setup, and this is done so that it's easier for you to create Copilot agents that are connected to SharePoint, but in this case we're not doing that. I want this to be publicly available with no authentication. So you need to go in here and say no authentication, and then you'll be all right. So if you get stuck with putting it out there and it won't let you do it, please make sure you've checked that setting in there. But this is also where you're going to be able to set those configuration options in the real world for what you want it to do. And from there, we are going to close those settings and hit the publish button, and we will publish this Copilot. So you've noticed I don't have to publish the whole way. We just do that when we get to the end. While we're waiting for that to publish, let's just have a look at another one here with some of the channels that are available. So you can publish Copilots for internal or for external use. So you can publish them into Microsoft Teams. You'll see here you can put them into different customer service systems, third-party customer service systems, or you can be publishing them out to your customers for external use, obviously on your website. You can have them working through Twilio, Facebook, mobile app. There's a whole lot of things here. So I'm going to work with the demo website here. We'll just close this one down and go back to the one that I had before. The options are all available to me here because I've switched that authentication to no authentication. The other one, not all of them were available because I was setting it to authenticated, so it was only going to let me publish in Teams. So I want to use the demo website, and this is the easiest one that you can use if you're just learning because it's just there. So then I can just sort of copy this website link, and you can put different welcome messages in here. So try out our healthy living agent. And again, with my kind of little Apple in here. And then conversation starters, you could put suggestions in here. I'm not going to worry too much about that. So we will save all of that. Let's grab a nice fresh browser tab here and put that one in. And there we go. We can try this out live. So I can come in here and say something like, what happens if I'm diagnosed with diabetes? And it's going to go out. So over the course of this tutorial now, we've got a Copilot here that is connected to 2 websites, an Excel spreadsheet online, a document. It's got a topic in there. What do I do in an emergency? I don't know if we ever tested that one. And so all of those things are in play. Other things that you can do in here. Part 7, don't run away. There's more here. You can actually come in here and create based on a template. So there are a bunch of templates in here that you can come in and play around with if you want to see what those things do. Some of these are coming soon. We have got voice capabilities coming soon. We've got the ability also coming soon to create agents that can start to do things on their own more independently than what I've just shown you. Make sure you're subscribed because I'll definitely be doing content on that when it comes through. We've actually also got all of these Copilots in here. So you've got a bunch of things that I've mucked around with, but you've also got within here your Copilot for Microsoft 365. So if you've got that paid subscription, this is the one where it's $30 per user per month and it's inside all of those Microsoft applications, including inside Teams. You can use the skills you've learned here to extend that to connect to the other systems. And the brand new announcement of this piece here, which is creating a Copilot agent inside that, You might now understand that this is familiar. We've got this field service agent that's sitting inside Teams, and look at this, Copilot Studio, describe. That's right where we started from in this tutorial. I've taken you right back to the start. This is why I think this is one of the most important skills you can learn right now. Thank you if you've come all the way to the end with me. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching. I've got a playlist here with some more videos on Copilot Studio. I'm going to keep adding to it based on the comments and based on the feedback of what people would like to learn. Thank you so much.